Hi, Every Word readers. Welcome to week 8 review. This was a very dense week of reading, and I think the back and forth nature of this week's reading is really indicative of the time we were reading about in the history of Judah. I hope you felt lots of emotions this week as you were reading. I hope you felt like urging the people on to listen to the faithful prophets, to turn from their sin, turn back to their faithful God. Hope you were amazed that God continued to send his word of faithfulness to these very disobedient people. I hope you were outraged at how defiant and unrelenting the people were as they were bent on their sin. I know one of the things we read in Jeremiah, the people said, we're going to listen to what you say, but we're not going to do it. And so just a real defiance of God and his word. So where we are in the story is Israel has already been exiled. And now Judah, that should have served as a warning to Judah, but no, it did not. And so now Babylon is bearing down on them, and we see the fall of Jerusalem in this week's reading. Our 3 faithful prophets continue to prophesy. Jeremiah is in the land with the people. He's telling them to turn. He gives lots of opportunities. God sends some messages of hope. Even in the midst of the darkness, a lot of times he's shut up in the palace or down in a well somewhere, faithfully prophesying, but the people won't listen. And then when he tells them Babylon is coming, and he says, if you will go with them, your life will be spared, but do not go to Egypt. And remember, Egypt is the place that God rescued them from, the place of oppression, and they're going, this rebellious group of people wants to go there and find refuge and think that they can hide from God. And one thing that popped out to me this week is even as the people disobey and go to Egypt, God even sends his word to Jeremiah there. Jeremiah is taken to Egypt, even though he's prophesied you shouldn't go there. And tradition tells us that he was stoned to death in Egypt. And so we see Jeremiah faithful to the end. And Ezekiel continues to prophesy. This week, Ezekiel, who was the would-be priest, but was taken into exile at the time he would have begun serving in the temple, gets the vision of this whole new miraculous temple that's bigger and greater and restored. And I think it's really interesting that as a priest, he was the one who got the vision of this temple, because he would have known all of these articles and the dimensions and all of the things, because he had studied it his whole life to serve there. There's some disagreement among scholars on what this actual temple is. Some believe that it's a literal temple that will be built to all the exact sizes and dimensions of Ezekiel's prophecy. Some believe that this is a figurative temple, and then there's a third view that kind of believes it's a little bit of both. But the point of the story is that worship will be restored among God's people. Intimacy will be restored among God's people. And I love how the book of Ezekiel closes, that it's a city named the Lord is there. And that's where we all want to be. And then our faithful friend Daniel in the palace in Babylon. Kings are coming and kings are going. It's crazy what we read, some of the stories that we read this week. And then in chapter 7 of Daniel gets another vision. And this is an important vision as we move forward. It's an apocalyptic vision, but we see this great courtroom setting where the Ancient of Days, God himself, comes in, sits down. The court is in session and the books are opened. What an awesome scene this is. And on into chapter 7, we see this Ancient of Days handing over the kingdom to the Son of Man, and it's declared that it will be a kingdom that will never end. hang on to these images, because when we get to the New Testament, Jesus, this is the title Jesus refers to himself most as, the Son of Man. And every time you read that in the New Testament, you'll know this is coming back to this prophecy in Daniel. And the readers, the New Testament readers, would have known that that's what Jesus was connecting. A really important prophecy here in the book of Daniel. And I just love these three faithful men. They teach us what it's like to live faithfully according to God's word when life doesn't turn out like we thought it would. And so we all have lessons to learn from these prophets. We also read First Chronicles and some of Second Chronicles. Okay, so you made it through 8 chapters or 9 of genealogy. That's a little rough go there, but it's important. And I have grown in my appreciation of genealogies. One, we can follow God's promises. In Genesis 3:15, he said, I will send an offspring of the woman who will crush the head of the snake. Well, how do you follow an offspring? It's through the genealogies. And it is a great reminder of God's promises in action. Also, it's a great historical record, kind of like if we had a list of the U.S. presidents, we could kind of go through American history based on that. Thirdly, it tells us a lot about the character and nature of the God we serve. He is carefully keeping the names of a son, of a son, of a son, of a son. And as we've read about the Canaanite gods, they were not keeping any records of a son, of a son, of a son. They were burning the sons on the altar. And so we serve a God who knew their name and a God who knows our name. Now, Chronicles covers the same period of time we just read about in the Kings, but it covers it from a different point of view. The Chronicles record of history would have been for the exiles who would return back to Jerusalem after we read the sad and tragic reality that God's temple was destroyed, the walls of Jerusalem were broken down, and all of the people were exiled. So these messages of the chroniclers were for those going back. So it's history, but with a point. The Chronicle is recording the people of Judah as the people of God, and that they belonged in the land. Central to the book of Chronicles is the temple, the building of the temple, and worship, because that was to be the hallmark of these people, was their God dwelling with them and their worship of the one true God. You'll notice that it's a little bit different record than what we read in 1st and 2nd Kings. We're getting a more spiritual, I guess, view, you would say, of these events of history, and the vignettes of the kings are patterned in such a way that if the kings obey, you follow the story and you see they are blessed. If they disobey, they follow the story and there's judgment and punishment. In that way, encouraging the people to be faithful. So we're on hold right now at a very sad time in the story. Jerusalem has been destroyed, and the people have been taken away to Babylon. A few people have gone to seek refuge in Egypt, which we already know is a bad idea. And poor Daniel is still faithfully serving under many different kings in Babylon. But the message of this story through the prophets is that the sin and disobedience is not going to be the defining factor of the people of God. It is in fact going to be God's promises that will define them for all of history. So congratulations on pressing through in this important period in the history of the people of Israel. And I hope you look forward to finishing the New Testament this coming week.